gotta pay my taxes, there's a long line at the bank, and then a bus is coming by. What if I just dove head first, ran on those double back tires? Anybody else? You ever think of shit like that? You know what gets me? Ceiling fans. Somebody's telling me some stuff I don't want to do. You're gonna need 2 forms of ID. We need your birth certificate. And the ceiling fan's behind their head. I'll get right on that. Doing, doing, doing. So anyway, I decided not to go home for the holidays. That's what I'm really trying to tell you here. No, I did. I kind of came to this epiphany. I'm like, man, I'm 41 years old. My dad had 5 kids by the time he's my age. I got to get on with my life here. So I was like going, you know what? I'm not working Thanksgiving. I'm not working Christmas. I'm not working New Year's. And it was like the middle of October. I was like, wait a minute, what about Halloween? Then my brain was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm getting a pumpkin. Right? That's how angry my brain is. It can't be just like, you know what? Hey, let's get a pumpkin. It's got to be, you know what? Fuck this. Let's get a pumpkin. That's what I started thinking. Carving that shit. I'm handing out candy to the kids. I'm meeting them at the door. Hey, what are you supposed to be, huh? Oh, yeah? Full-size Snickers. Bam! Who does that? Who does that? Nobody. Nobody. I will break your fucking bag with my candy. Huh? AC/DC pumpkin. You ever seen that before? You haven't, right? You tell all your friends where you've seen that shit. Look at you. Lean to one side. That's heavy. Here's another candy bar. You'd be like dumbbells. Walk right down the stairs. This is how much of a maniac I am. Do you know? This is all true. It took me 4 trips to go to the supermarket to finally be able to buy this goddamn pumpkin. Because every time I would walk in there to get it, I'd be thinking all these happy thoughts. This is a great thing. I'm embracing the holidays. It's going to bring me and my girlfriend together. This is a very loving thing to do when I reach out and grab it. And all I'd hear in the back of my head is, what are you, a fag? And immediately, I had to turn around and walk out. All right, let me explain that joke to functional people in the crowd. Let me explain this. All right. This is how it works with guys. Anytime you do anything remotely sensitive, heartwarming, anything that's gonna make you more of a loving, caring individual, immediately all your guy friends suggest that maybe, just maybe, you wanna suck a dick. Oh, it's brutal. Even if you do something smart, right? Like it's raining out. He's got an umbrella! What a fag! Oh my God! What are you, afraid of the water? Put your shoulders up, you fucking homo! Jesus Christ! Would you pull that thing out of your ass? Oh, it's brutal! It doesn't even have to make sense. You carved a pumpkin? What do you do next? Carve some guy's ass with your cock? What a fag! What, are you gonna blow a scarecrow? Dude, get away from me with your gay little pumpkin. Oh, it's brutal. Dude, what are you, a fag? Is the reason why guys drop at 55 out of fucking nowhere. It's literally from 5 decades of just suppressing the urge to like hug a puppy, admit a baby's cute, say you want a cookie. You just gotta keep pushing it down like, fuck that, I'm not sucking dick! I'm not sucking dick! Right? Yeah. One day you're in a Denny's and they forget to put bananas in your pancakes. You just have like an aneurysm and your head slams off that sticky table. And the last thing you hear before it all goes black is your friends go, he got bananas in his pancakes! What a fag! Oh my God, it wasn't sweet enough with the syrup, you fairy! Hey, bring another one over home and shove it up his ass, right? Yeah, because it looks like a dick, right? It looks like a dick. Yeah, I thought it, then I said it. I'm awesome. Yeah. Ah. It's a horrible, horrible way to live your life. You can't live, you're just dying every day. Just every dumb thing that you can do as a guy. Any stupid thing that's going to shorten your life makes you more of a man. Fucking 0 degrees out, you don't have a coat on. Dude, you're cold? Can't admit it. No, I'm not cold. Dude, I'm not cold. I'm just thinking of something I really agree with, you know? No. Trying to let go of this ball of hate in my chest. That's why I don't have any kids. I don't. I think it's irresponsible to be a complete maniac, not work on yourself, and then just have a kid, and then just start downloading all your fucked up thoughts onto that little pristine little hard drive. You know? You send them off to school with your little Your little manifestos, they're freaking out other kids at school. 2 + 2, Timmy, what'd you get? Daddy keeps cash in the walls because he doesn't trust banks. Yeah. No, it's embarrassing to know this little about yourself at my age, man. I gotta get beyond it. Like, do you know I finally ended up getting that pumpkin? You know, I actually had to bring my girlfriend down to the supermarket, and I had to walk her by the pumpkins. Because I knew the second I did it, she was gonna freak out. And she did. The second she saw him, she was just like, oh my God, a pumpkin. Halloween's coming up. We should get a pumpkin. Oh my God, let's get a pumpkin. Starts doing like this little pumpkin dance. And I had this unbelievable urge just to take her head and just fucking mush it right to the pumpkins. And really hold it there for a second. Like feel the panic in the back of her head as the air bubbles became like less and less frequent. She sat there contemplating, is this how it's gonna end? Pumpkin seeds up my nose. I always envisioned being surrounded by loved ones, looking back on achievements. It's so orange. No, I resented her. Resented the fact she gets to be a fag. She does. She gets to see pumpkin. Oh my God, right? Sees a little puppy. It's so cute. Tries at sad movies. I gotta hold on to all of that shit. Slowly dying inside. Go out to go see a sad movie, comes to the sad part, what do? She's crying, I gotta think of some funny shit. What if somebody kicked Sean Penn in the balls right now? I start laughing. Then they get mad at you. How could you laugh during a time like this? Because I'm not fucking allowed. That's right, thank you, sir. I like how you turned this into a town meeting, this guy down here. That's right. That's exactly it. I always wanted to cry when I was watching Lifetime, but you know, I was never allowed to. Fucking sick. Hopped up on Dayquil. I think that's my tribute to the Fillmore. That's the drug I did before I got on stage. Had to be a little buzzed, right? My own little pedestrian way. So anyways, no, my life, I just feel myself. I'm starting to change, man. I'm a happier person, and I think I'm ready, man. I want to have a kid. It's a big thing. I want to have a kid. But the only thing I'm worried about that is I like little kids. I like them when they're little. I don't like when they get bigger and they start thinking like they know shit, you know? Like, I understand why parents hit their kids. I get it, you know? I'm not saying take your day out on them, but definitely, you know, they get a little lippy, you know, throw out a jab, set the tone, you know? Sort of. No, when they start thinking they know stuff, I can't, you know, my buddy's got a kid. His kid is at that age, right? They invited me over to, you know, come to dinner the other day, because I'm like at that age, I'm like that weirdo guy they feel sad for, so they gotta invite me over. So, yeah, I really have a pathetic existence at this point in my life. So I'm sitting there, I'm trying to be social with the kid, you know? And he's really into space, so I'm like, hey, look, the stars are out, huh? The stars are out. The kid's like, actually, that's not a star. That one is Jupiter. Jupiter is the 5th planet. And I'm like, wow, hey, you gotta do that bullshit like you're impressed? That's amazing. Wow, really? Is it? Is it? They won't shut up. They just keep going on. It's got 17 moons. And I gotta sit there acting impressed as I'm just waiting for another adult to come by and just scoop the kid up and just rescue me. Gonna sit here and act like I'm amazed with this? I saw a stripper quit on stage 2 months ago. What do you think you're gonna tell me that's gonna blow my mind? You're not. Nothing. You got nothing. So the kid just kept going on and on. It's got that, it's got that. And I couldn't take it anymore. So you know what I finally did? I poured a little water on him. Oh, we didn't know what to do. It was great. He just sat, he just froze up. He didn't have the social maturity to be like, dude, did you just fucking pour water on me? How old are you? What kind of a person does something like that? So I'm sitting there, I am laughing my ass off. I'm dying. I'm like, I cracked the code. I finally figured out what to do in this situation. And you know what this little bastard did? He went in the kitchen, he fucking told on me. Then my buddy's wife comes running out. She starts screaming at me like I'm 5 years old, which technically I am, because I'm pouring water on, like, you know, 6-year-olds, right? We don't do that. We don't do that in this house. That is a no. We don't do that. That's when my temper came up, and I'll be like, you know what? Fuck you, kid, fuck Jupiter, I'm out of here. I don't need this, right? No, but I didn't do it. I just sat there and I was like, look, you're pouring water on kids, okay? Just had an honest moment with myself. You know when you try to debate it in your head to try to make yourself right? Yeah, but dude, it's bottled water. Like this kid doesn't get rained on, that acid rain, you were cleansing his brow. I don't know. But I'm gonna have a kid, because I like when they're little. It's just worth it. You know? I like toddlers, man. That's the best age. They're hilarious, you know? They never have a shirt on. They already got a beer belly, even though they never drank before. And they're not even self-conscious. They don't try to suck it in. They just let it hang out over the diaper. Got like cereal in their hair. They're a mess. They're a mess. They just see people talking. They just come up, hey, kid, throw the Applejack. They just start telling a story. They don't have the decency to start at the beginning. They like start in the middle, then they jump back to the beginning, and then they tell the end. It's like a Tarantino movie, like Travolta's walking by in the background. Hey, throw the Applejack. It's like, what the fuck is this kid talking about? I love him. Somebody get him a stool to sit down. He sounds like he's gonna have a heart attack. It's like drooling all over himself. Do they make wife beaters for little 2-year-olds? They should do it. Little Fisher Price Harley Davidson. I can't take it. They're adorable. No, but it's a scary time, dude. It's a scary time to raise a kid. That's the only thing I'm worried about. It's a really scary time. You know? I think they're getting ready to like microchip all of us. I'm not even joking, dude. Have you seen that new Duracell commercial where that woman can't find her kid in the park? You know? Dude, what kind of a fucked up way is that to sell batteries? It's a little hardcore, don't you think? Don't you remember the old battery commercials? They show some guy in a rainstorm, right? Changing a tire, takes out a flashlight. Hey, thank God I had Duracell. I can see how wet I'm getting. That was it. Now they're showing this woman, she can't find her kid in the park. She's sitting there like, Kevin? Kevin? Has anybody seen Kevin? Sitting there freaking out, then she pulls out this device. And then all of a sudden, Kevin comes running out of the woods. And they're just like, Duracell batteries. It's like, dude, fuck the batteries. What was that thing she just took out of her pocket? How did Kevin know to come out of the woods? He didn't have an antenna. His sneakers weren't glowing. What the fuck is in Kevin that is connected to that? Dude, don't just show me that like that's normal. Oh, yeah, remote control kids. Hey, let's go see mommy. Dude, that is some creepy New World Order shit. Evidently, it's a bracelet, and they just put the microchip in there. But that's how they're going to do it. They're going to scare the shit out of you that someone's going to take your kid. It's just a bracelet. Well, what if they take the bracelet? Oh, we'll just glue it to the forehead. We'll just sort of drill it in there. I'm telling you, whatever they're doing to dogs, they're going to be doing to us in like 10 years, right? They got those 6 microchips with their balls cut off. I'm telling you. They're going to have us on TV waiting to get rescued like some accountant looking all fucked up at the TV, right? That's what you're going to hear in the future. That's going to be the future. Dude, you hear about Eddie? They turned his chip off, man! Dude, the guy's fucked. He is fucked. He made one little joke about the government. Next thing you know, he had to buy a round. His head wouldn't go through. They kept scanning it, nothing. He's outside screaming up at a satellite, turn it back on. They're not turning it back on. The dude's fucked. The dude is fucked. Dude, I ain't standing next to him. They're going to shut my chip off. I don't even know that guy.
At my wife's party, her coworker mocked me in front of everyone. The guests smiled. I smiled back. He had no idea. I already had everything I needed to burn his world down, and I was in no rush to strike the match. My name is Winston Keene. I'm 43 years old, and I run a mid-sized media production company in Nashville, Tennessee. Podcasts, live events, brand storytelling. We've built something solid over the years. The kind of business that doesn't make headlines but keeps the lights on for 22 employees and their families. I'm proud of that. I married Priya when I was 31. She was 27. Sharp, ambitious, the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately understood its geometry. We had 2 kids, Jonah, now 13, all elbows and quiet intensity, and Nora, 9 years old and the loudest person in any building she enters. For over a decade, I thought we were a team. I was wrong. The night it all broke open, and I don't mean metaphorically, I mean the night the foundation actually shifted beneath my feet, was at Priya's company mixer at the Meridian rooftop downtown. Her employer, a mid-sized brand consultancy called Arclight Creative, through these gatherings periodically. Clients, partners, staff, plus ones, the usual curated crowd of people pretending to like each other while hunting for their next opportunity. I'd been to a few of these before. They were tolerable if you found the right corner and nursed a decent drink. That night, I found neither. I arrived late. A live event ran long across town, and I drove straight there. Priya was already in the middle of the room laughing with a group near the bar. She looked good. She always looked good at these things, like she saved a version of herself for public consumption that I rarely got to see at home anymore. I grabbed a drink, loosened my collar, and started making my way toward her. That's when I saw him for the first time. Zane Whitfield, 45, broad-shouldered. The kind of man who wore confidence, like a tailored jacket. He stood close to Priya, closer than a colleague has any business standing, and had his hand resting on the bar just inches from hers. Not touching, just near. The way a man stands when he's already decided something, but is still pretending it's undecided. Priya introduced us without missing a beat. Winston, this is Zane. He's been consulting with our team on the Harlow account. Zane extended his hand and looked at me the way a man looks at a speed bump. Something to note, then move past. Heard a lot about you, he said, his grip just a beat too firm. The podcast guy, right? I smiled. Among other things. He tilted his head and glanced around the room with the easy arrogance of someone who never once doubted his own welcome. Must be a good gig. Low overhead, high margins if you know what you're doing. He paused, then added with a small grin aimed directly at the people standing nearby, though I guess it depends on whether anyone's actually listening. The group around us went quiet for exactly one beat. Then someone laughed. A sure, polite, uncomfortable laugh, and a few others looked away. Priya's smile didn't waver, but her eyes cut sideways for just a fraction of a moment. I caught it. I stood there holding my drink, watching the guests hide their reactions behind sips and sideways glances, and I understood exactly what had just happened. He'd done it deliberately in front of her colleagues, her clients, her world. He had taken a shot at me just to see how I'd land. I set my glass down slowly and looked at him. You're right, I said, even and unhurried. It does depend on whether anyone's listening. Lucky for me, they are. He held my gaze for a moment. Then he smiled broader, this time like he'd gotten what he came for, and turned back to the group. I didn't say another word to him that night. I didn't need to. What I needed was to think, because something in the way Priya hadn't defended me, hadn't even blinked, sat in my chest like a splinter. On the drive home, Nora called from her grandmother's house asking if we'd remembered to record her Saturday morning cartoons. I said yes, even though I hadn't. Jonah was already asleep when we got in. Priya went to the bathroom and I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, still in my jacket. The splinter had become a question, and questions like that don't let you sleep. I gave it several days before I did anything. Days of watching, listening, keeping my face neutral while my mind worked overtime. Priya didn't notice. That told me something, too. Eventually, I hired a private investigator.
His name was Roy Bassett.
Mid-50s, former Metro Nashville detective. The kind of man who looked like he'd seen everything twice and stopped being surprised the first time. A colleague had used him in a business dispute and vouched for him without hesitation. I called Roy one morning from my car outside the office and told him I needed discreet surveillance on a person of interest connected to my wife. He asked 2 questions. How long did I want coverage, and did I want photos or full documentation? I said full documentation. He said he'd start soon. I felt something shift in me after that call. Not relief, more like the moment before a storm when the air pressure changes, and you know it's coming even if you can't see it yet. Some days passed, and then Roy sent me a check-in message letting me know there was good movement to discuss. Soon after, I was in his office on Demonbroom Street. Roy had a manila folder on the desk between us. He opened it and slid out 3 printed photographs without ceremony. Zane Whitfield and Priya, a coffee shop on Elliston Place, an afternoon she'd told me was a client lunch downtown. A parking garage on 4th Avenue, an evening she'd told me she was working late. And the third photo, the one that closed the door on every remaining doubt I had, The two of them at what looked like a hotel lobby bar one night while I was home helping Nora with a school project on the water cycle. I sat with those photographs for a long moment. How long have you known this guy? Roy asked finally. Met him not long ago, I said. He worked with her firm. Roy nodded slowly. He's been careful. Mostly. But not careful enough. He tapped the folder. There's more in there. Phone records from a data request. Some financial stuff you might find interesting. I looked up. Financial, Roy? Your wife made several transfers in recent months from a joint account. Small amounts. A few hundred here, 1,000 there, to a business consulting invoice vendor listed as ZW Advisory Group. I stared at him.
ZW. I said.
Zane Whitfield. Roy confirmed, and his expression didn't change at all. I drove back to the office with a folder on the passenger seat and my jaw tight enough to ache. She hadn't just been seeing him. She'd been funding him out of our money. The anger that came up wasn't hot. It was cold and very, very clear. That afternoon, I called my attorney, Douglas Hull. Doug was 61, methodical, and had handled 2 of my business contracts and 1 trademark dispute over the years. He was not a family lawyer by trade, but he knew everyone who was. Within the hour, he'd referred me to a colleague who specialized in asset protection and divorce proceedings, and soon after I had an appointment set. But before that appointment, something happened that changed the shape of everything. I came home one evening to find Nora sitting at the kitchen table doing homework and Jonah parked on the couch with his headphones on. Normal enough. What wasn't normal was the voice I heard coming from Priya's home office down the hall. Low, easy, unmistakably male. I walked to the doorway. Priya was on a video call, laptop open, back half turned to the door. On the screen, Zane Whitfield, in what looked like a home office, relaxed and smiling. She sensed me before she heard me. Her shoulders stiffened. I'll call you back, she said to the screen, and closed the laptop in one motion. She turned in her chair and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her before. Not guilt exactly, more like calculation, like she was already 3 moves ahead and deciding which one to play.
Work call, she said.
I didn't answer. I looked at the closed laptop, then back at her. Dinner's in 20 minutes, I said and walked back down the hall. I sat at the table and helped Nora with her multiplication tables while the kitchen timer counted down, and my mind ran through every conversation I needed to have in the days ahead. Not with Priya. Not yet. With lawyers, with accountants, with Roy Bassett, who I planned to call first thing the next morning because Zane Whitfield was about to find out that looking at me like a speed bump was the most expensive mistake he'd ever make. Douglas Hull called me before I'd even made coffee one morning. Winston, I need you to come in today. I was in his office on Charlotte Avenue soon after. Doug was already standing when I walked in, which was unusual. He gestured to the chair across from his desk and closed the door himself instead of asking his assistant to do it. Roy Bassett called me last night, he said, settling into his chair and folding his hands on the desk. He wanted to give you a heads up through me rather than directly. Professional courtesy, he said. I waited. Doug exhaled slowly. Roy received a call a few days ago from Zane Whitfield's personal attorney. They were fishing, trying to find out if anyone had retained Roy recently for domestic surveillance work. They didn't name you specifically, but Roy said the timing and the description they used were close enough that he wanted you to know immediately. I sat very still. Whitfield knows someone's watching him. He suspects, Doug corrected. There's a difference. But it means he's been careful enough to notice something, or someone tipped him.
He paused.
Roy is confident his methods were clean. But he can't rule out that Priya noticed a behavioral change in you and said something. I thought about the video call, Priya closing the laptop, the look on her face. Not guilt, but calculation. She said something? I said flatly. Doug nodded once. Roy's recommendation is to pull back on active surveillance immediately and shift to document collection only. No more physical tailing. Everything through financial records, communication subpoenas, and what you can legally access from shared accounts. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling for a moment. Then I looked at Doug. Fine, pull Roy back. But I want everything he has documented and preserved today. Already done, Doug said. There's one more thing. He opened a folder and turned it toward me. Roy flagged something before he pulled back. ZW Advisory Group, the consulting vendor Priya's been paying. Roy ran it through the state business registry. It was registered not long ago. One member LLC. Registered agent is a man named Dale Whitfield. Doug tapped the page. Zane's younger brother. I stared at the registration document. The address listed was a UPS store on West End Avenue. It's a shell, I said. Almost certainly, Doug replied. Which means those transfers aren't consulting fees. They're personal payments routed through a fake business entity. That's not a marital issue anymore, Winston. That's potentially wire fraud. I drove back to the office with both hands on the wheel and my mind running clean and fast, the way it does when I'm producing a live event, and 3 things go wrong simultaneously, and I have to triage in real time. No panic, just sequencing. First, protect the finances. I called our accountant from the parking garage and had him flag every joint account for monitoring and begin separating my business assets from personal ones. Second, the kids. I called my mother in Brentwood and asked if Jonah and Nora could stay with her for a weekend.
She didn't ask why.
She said of course and told me to eat something. Third, Zane Whitfield's upcoming event. I'd seen it on LinkedIn, a live showcase he was hosting for brand partners and potential investors. A media innovation evening at a venue on 5th Avenue North. Around 70 guests, catered, presentation heavy. The kind of event where reputations either get built or buried. I had contacts in the Nashville media production world that Zane couldn't begin to match. One of them, a tech coordinator named Felix, who did AV setup for half the city's corporate events, confirmed he'd been hired for Zane's showcase. Felix owed me 2 favors from a festival we'd co-produced years earlier. I called in one of them. I didn't ask Felix to do anything dishonest. I asked him to give me access to the event's presentation upload system for a short window the night before the showcase, using the admin credentials the venue used for all their client events, credentials that, as it turned out, Zane had set using his own birthday. Felix mentioned it offhand with a kind of contempt only a tech professional can summon for that level of carelessness. I built my version of Slide 6 at home at my kitchen table after the kids were asleep. No graphic content, no rage. Just time-stamped emails, 2 photographs from Roy's documentation, and a clean screenshot of the ZW Advisory Group registration with Dale Whitfield's name highlighted. Factual, surgical, undeniable. I uploaded it late one night, sitting in a quiet house while Jonah's bedroom light glowed faintly under his door. Then I made myself a cup of coffee, sat back down at the table, and waited for the next day to arrive. The showcase was held one evening not long after. I arrived early, signed in under a name that wasn't mine, accepted a name badge and a glass of sparkling water from a passing server, and found a position near the back wall with a clear sight line to the presentation screen. The room was everything Zane had designed it to be. Dim, warm, expensive-looking. Roughly 80 people in tailored clothes telling each other how interesting they were. A string quartet played in the corner, which was either sophisticated or overreaching, depending on your tolerance for that sort of thing. Zane took the stage not long after. He was smooth, I'd give him that. He had the cadence of a man who'd given this particular speech in his head 1,000 times and finally got to say it out loud. Slide 1, vision. Slide 2, market opportunity. Slide 3, the portfolio. Slide 4, growth projections. Slide 5, client testimonials, all glowing, all carefully selected. Then slide 6. The transition happened mid-sentence. Zane was saying something about strategic partnerships when the screen behind him changed. The room shifted the way rooms shift when the temperature drops suddenly. Not dramatically, just noticeably. A few people leaned forward. Someone in the 3rd row turned to the person beside them. A woman near the bar stopped mid-sip. I watched Zane turn, watched him read the screen, watched his posture change in real time, the shoulders dropping a fraction, the jaw setting, the easy confidence draining out of him like water through a broken seal. In the front row, a silver-haired man in a dark suit stood up without a word, buttoned his jacket, and walked toward the exit. I'd done my research. That was Gerald Whitfield, Zane's father, the man who'd bankrolled the first years of his son's consulting business. He didn't look at Zane as he passed. That image, a father walking out on his son without a backward glance, was the one I carried with me as I slipped out the side door before the room fully understood what I had just witnessed. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. I walked 2 blocks to where I'd parked, got in, and sat for a moment with my hands in my lap. My phone showed several missed calls from Priya. I set it face down on the passenger seat. There was still a great deal left to do. Attorneys, court filings, conversations I wasn't looking forward to. But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Solid, like a man standing on ground that belonged to him. I started the car and drove home to my children. My mother didn't ask questions. That was one of the things I'd always loved about her. She opened her front door in Brentwood one morning, looked at my face for exactly 2 seconds, and then looked past me at Jonah and Nora climbing out of the back seat. "Who wants pancakes shaped like animals?" she called out over my shoulder. Nora sprinted up the porch steps without answering, which was answer enough. Jonah followed at his usual measured pace, hands in his hoodie pocket, but I caught the small upward pull at the corner of his mouth. I carried their bags inside, kissed my mother on the cheek, and told her I'd be back soon. She squeezed my arm once, tight, brief, and let me go without a word. I drove back to the city with the windows down and the radio off. The apartment I'd rented was a furnished 2-bedroom on the east side of town. The kind of place that smelled like new carpet and other people's decisions. Not home, but it was mine. And right now, that distinction mattered more than comfort. I spent one whole morning at my desk with every financial document I'd gathered spread across the table in front of me. Account statements going back more than a year. The ZW Advisory Group registration, Roy Bassett's full documentation package, a printout of every transfer Priya had made that I could trace, totaling several $1,000s across 7 transactions, small enough to go unnoticed, large enough to matter. I photographed everything, encrypted the files, and sent copies to Doug's secure server. Then I called him. "The fraud angle," I said when he picked up. "How solid is it?" Doug was quiet for a moment. "Solid enough to raise in proceedings. Wire fraud through a shell entity is a serious charge. Whether the DA pursues it is their call, but the documentation makes a compelling case." He paused. "How are you holding up?"
"Fine," I said.
"What do I need to do next on the custody side?" He referred me again to his colleague, a family attorney named Patricia Vane, who I'd spoken with once already. I called her next. Patricia was direct and unhurried, which I appreciated. She told me to begin a detailed log of my parenting involvement, dates, activities, who was present, and to do it going back as far as I could accurately remember. She also told me something that landed harder than I expected. If she moves to restrict your access before you file, it becomes a longer road. File first. I filed soon after. I drove out to my mother's house to pick up the kids. Nora ran out to the car with a crayon drawing made for the new apartment, a house with a crooked chimney and 4 stick figures out front, one of which appeared to be holding a microphone. She told me that one was me because I make podcasts. I folded it carefully and put it in the glove compartment. Jonah waited until Nora was inside before he spoke. He leaned against the passenger door with his arms crossed and looked at me in the flat, evaluating way he had that sometimes made me feel like I was being interviewed.
"Dad," he said.
"Are you and Mom getting divorced?" I looked at him directly.
"He deserved that much." "I don't know yet," I said.
"But things are changing, and I want you to hear from me that none of it is your fault, and none of it changes anything about you and me." "Understood." He held my gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded once, pushed off the door, and got in the car. I stood there for a second before getting in myself. 13 years old, and already carrying himself like someone who'd made peace with hard news. I didn't know whether to be proud of that or grieve it. I chose both. The call started not long after. First, it was a brand partner I'd worked with for years, a mid-size outdoor gear company that had renewed their podcast sponsorship with us twice. Their marketing director, a usually warm woman named Cheryl, called to say they were pausing the renewal conversation. She sounded uncomfortable. When I pressed her gently, she admitted that someone had reached out to their team with concerns about my professional stability and recent erratic behavior. She wouldn't say who. I thanked her calmly, ended the call, and sat in my office with the door closed for several minutes. Then I called Roy Bassett. I need you back on, I said. Different scope. I want to know who Zane Whitfield has been contacting in my professional network recently. Roy said he'd see what he could find through legitimate channels, LinkedIn activity, mutual contacts willing to talk, any documented outreach that could be traced. He called back within a couple of days. Zane had contacted 4 people in my professional circle. 1 podcast host I co-produced with for years, 2 brand partners, and a venue manager I used regularly for live events. The message varied slightly in each case, but carried the same spine. Winston Keene was going through something personal that was affecting his judgment, and they might want to reconsider any upcoming commitments. He hadn't used his own name in most of them. 2 of the outreaches came through a third-party, mutual contact type arrangement designed to look like organic concern rather than deliberate sabotage. It was sophisticated, and it made me genuinely angry for the first time since all of this started. I spent a couple of days building a defamation file. Every contact Zane had reached out to, I called personally. I didn't attack him. I simply told each person directly that I was aware of a coordinated effort to damage my professional reputation and that I intended to pursue legal remedies. I asked each of them if they'd be willing to document what they'd been told and who had told them. 3 of the 4 said yes immediately. The 4th said they needed to think about it, which was honest and fine. Doug Hull connected me with a litigation attorney named Carl Briggs who handled defamation cases. Carl reviewed the file and told me we had a strong foundation for a civil suit. He sent Zane's attorney a formal cease and desist that same day. The response came back quickly, a thinly worded denial that essentially admitted the contact had happened while arguing it was protected opinion rather than actionable defamation. Carl called it the legal equivalent of a man caught red-handed claiming he was just admiring the merchandise. I authorized him to file. That evening I picked up Jonah and Nora from school. On the drive home, Nora told me in exhaustive detail about a disagreement she'd had with her best friend over which animal would win in a race between a cheetah and a motorcycle. Jonah stared out the window and occasionally offered a single-word verdict when asked. Normal. Mercifully, stubbornly normal. At home, I helped Nora with reading, reviewed Jonah's history project, and made spaghetti for dinner. After the kids were in bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and spent an hour going through the financial documentation one more time, looking for anything I'd missed. That's when I found it. Buried in a statement from over a year earlier, a transfer I'd originally flagged as a household expense was a payment to an entity called Luminary Brand Partners. I searched the name. The registered agent was the same UPS store on West End Avenue as ZW Advisory Group. Different name, same address, same brother. Zane had been running at least 2 shell entities drawing from our accounts. The total, once I added it up, was well over $6,000. I forwarded it to Doug without a single word of commentary. The documentation spoke well enough for itself. Then I closed the laptop, turned off the kitchen light, and went to check on my kids before I went to bed. The message came through one evening while I was reviewing contract revisions at my desk. Not a call, a text from a number I didn't recognize, but the name at the end of the message made it unmistakable. You and me. This weekend. Centennial Park, East Pavilion, morning. No lawyers, no cameras, no audience. Just a conversation between 2 men. Come alone, or don't come at all. Zane. I read it twice. Then I set my phone face down and finished the paragraph I was working on before I let myself think about it. The rational response was obvious. Ignore it. Forward it to Doug. Let the attorneys add it to the file. That's what a careful man does. That's what a man protecting his legal position does. I thought about the way Zane had looked at me at that rooftop mixer. The hand near Priya's on the bar. The podcast guy comment aimed at the room. The 4 professional contacts he'd poisoned. The $6,000 funneled out of my household through shell companies with his brother's name on them. I texted back one word. Fine. I drove to Centennial Park that weekend in jeans and a jacket, parked on the west side, and walked the long way around to give myself time to think. The park was quiet at that hour. A few joggers, a woman walking 2 dogs, an older man reading on a bench. Nashville in early autumn. Cool enough for a jacket, the kind of morning that felt clean and uncomplicated. Zane was already at the pavilion when I arrived. He was standing with his hands in his coat pockets, looking out toward the replica Parthenon like he was posing for something. He turned when he heard my footsteps on the path. "Didn't think you'd show," he said. "Here I am," I replied, and stopped about 6 feet away. He studied me for a moment. Some of the easy arrogance from the rooftop mixer was still there, but underneath it something had shifted. The lawsuit had reached him. The cease and desist had reached him. Gerald Whitfield, walking out of his own son's showcase, had apparently reached the family in ways that were still reverberating. "I want this to stop," he said. "The legal stuff, the filings, all of it." I looked at him steadily. "Then you should have thought about that before you ran a shell company out of my bank account."
His jaw tightened.
"That was Priya's idea." "Then Priya will answer for it separately," I said. "And so will you." He took a step forward. His voice dropped, and the pretense of civility went with it. "You think you're the first guy this has happened to? You think dragging this into court makes you look strong? It makes you look like a man who couldn't keep his wife interested." I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I looked at him the way I look at a microphone when the feed drops mid-recording. Calm, assessing, already thinking 3 steps ahead. "You came here to rattle me," I said. "That's not a conversation. That's a last move from a man who's out of options." Something shifted in his face. Then a flash of something raw, and he closed the remaining distance between us fast. His hand came up toward my collar. I didn't step back. I caught his wrist, turned my hip into him, and we went sideways into the pavilion railing with enough force to make the whole structure shudder. It lasted maybe 8 seconds. A jogger who'd been coming up the path shouted something and broke into a run toward us. An older man from a nearby bench was already on his feet moving our direction. Zane and I separated, not because either of us was done, but because 2 people were suddenly between us with hands out, voices raised, asking what was happening. Zane straightened his jacket. A small cut at the corner of his lip was already showing. He looked at me across the 2 people standing between us with something I hadn't seen on his face before. Not amusement, not contempt, just the flat recognition of a man who finally understood he'd miscalculated. "We're done here," I said to the jogger and the older man. "Thank you." I turned and walked back up the pathway I'd come. My knuckle was scraped where it had caught the railing. I flexed my hand twice and kept walking. By the time I reached my car, my phone showed a missed call from Doug. I called him back immediately and told him exactly what had happened, start to finish, without omission. He listened without interrupting. "The text message constitutes evidence of him initiating contact," Doug said when I finished. "Document the physical contact in writing today. Photograph your hand and send it to me. Don't contact him again under any circumstances." "Already planned," I said. There was a brief pause. "Winston, are you all right?" I looked out through the windshield at the park, at the jogger who'd intervened now stretching against a bench some distance away, at the ordinary morning continuing around me like nothing had happened. "Yeah," I said. "I'm all right." And I meant it. The custody hearing was set for a morning in October, weeks after the Centennial Park incident. By then, the defamation suit against Zane was filed. The fraud documentation had been handed to Doug for potential referral to the DA's office, and Patricia Vane had assembled what she described as a thorough and compelling parenting record on my behalf. Priya had retained her own family attorney, a man named Stuart Colby, who had a reputation for aggressive pretrial maneuvering. True to form, Colby submitted a supplemental declaration shortly before the hearing, claiming I had been volatile and threatening in recent weeks, and citing my behavior as grounds for limiting my parenting time. Patricia read it to me over the phone in a tone so deliberately neutral that I could tell she was working to contain her own reaction. "He's going to put a witness on the stand," she said. "A woman named Donna Fielding. She's listed as a friend of Priya's who claims to have witnessed you speaking aggressively to the children at a school pickup." I sat very still. I ran through every school pickup I could remember in my head like a film editor scrubbing through footage. "That didn't happen," I said. "I know," Patricia replied. "So let's prove it." What Donna Fielding apparently hadn't considered was that Jonah's school had recently installed exterior security cameras covering the pickup lane. Patricia submitted a formal request for the footage through the school's administrative office. The principal, A methodical woman named Dr. Karen Foley reviewed the request, confirmed the footage existed and had been retained, and provided it with quiet efficiency. The footage showed my pickups on every relevant date. Calm, present, Nora climbing into the car and immediately talking, Jonah adjusting his backpack straps before getting in the exact same way every single time. No raised voices, no aggression, nothing resembling what Donna Fielding had described. Patricia also presented a year's worth of school event attendance records, Jonah's teacher's written statement describing me as consistently engaged and supportive, and Nora's pediatric appointment log showing I had accompanied her to most of her recent visits. The hearing itself was held in a quiet courtroom on a gray morning. Priya sat at the opposite table in a charcoal blazer, her expression composed. We didn't look at each other when I entered. Donna Fielding took the stand and described the alleged incident with the rehearsed specificity of someone who'd been coached. Patricia's cross-examination was methodical and unhurried. She established the date, the time, the specific location. Then she asked Donna whether she was aware that the school had installed exterior cameras covering the pickup area. Donna blinked. I wasn't sure about that. Patricia submitted the footage. The judge, a compact woman named the Honorable Frances Aldridge, watched it in full without expression. Then she looked at Donna Fielding for a long moment without speaking. Colby objected to the footage on procedural grounds. Judge Aldridge overruled him in a tone that suggested she found the objection unpersuasive and mildly irritating. When Donna stepped down, she didn't look at Priya. Patricia presented the full parenting record. Colby attempted to reframe several entries as evidence of overcompensation following marital breakdown, which Judge Aldridge acknowledged and then set aside with a single sentence. Engaged parenting is engaged parenting, counsel, regardless of its timing relative to marital proceedings. Colby's face didn't change, but something behind his eyes went flat. The ruling on temporary custody came down not long after the hearing concluded. Primary physical custody to Winston Keene, pending full proceedings. Scheduled parenting time for Priya. A requirement that neither parent make changes to the children's school, medical, or extracurricular arrangements without mutual agreement or court approval. Patricia called me with the ruling while I was sitting in my car in the courthouse parking garage. I listened to her read it through and didn't say anything until she finished. Thank you, Patricia, I said. You built a strong record, she replied. That's why we won. I sat in the garage for a few minutes after we hung up, not celebrating, just absorbing. Jonah and Nora would come home to my apartment that evening. They'd eat whatever I made for dinner, argue about who got the remote, and eventually fall asleep in the rooms I'd set up for them with the specific furniture they'd each picked out from the store. That was what I fought for. Not the verdict, not the vindication.
Just that.
It started with a phone call from Jonah. It was an evening in late October, days before what was supposed to be a pre-scheduled parenting weekend. I was in the middle of a production call with two of my editors when my phone lit up with Jonah's name. I excused myself immediately. Jonah didn't call me from his mother's house. He texted, always. I picked up and heard road noise. Dad. His voice was low, controlled in the way he got when he was frightened, but didn't want to show it. We're in the car. Mom has a lot of bags in the trunk. She said we're going to Grandma Arena's in Memphis for the weekend. He paused. But she didn't tell you, did she? It wasn't a question. I kept my voice even. Where are you right now, bud? 40 West. We passed the Belmead exit a few minutes ago. Is Nora with you? Yeah, she's asleep.
Okay.
You did the right thing calling me. Stay calm. Don't let your mom know you called, and I'll handle it. I paused. Jonah, I'm proud of you. I heard him exhale. Okay, he said quietly, and ended the call. I was on the phone with Patricia Vane before I'd reached the front door of my apartment. Patricia had the duty judge's emergency line for exactly this kind of situation. She called me back within minutes. I have an emergency order, Patricia said. Judge Aldridge signed it. I'm sending it to Metro Nashville PD and the Bellevue precinct now. They'll intercept the vehicle. The kids are in the car, I said. I know. The officers are instructed to handle it calmly. They'll pull her over, confirm the children are present, and inform her of the order. No drama, if it can be avoided. It took a while. Long enough that I spent it driving west on I-40 myself, not because I needed to be there, but because I couldn't sit still. Patricia called me when it was done. Priya had been pulled over near the Dixon County line. The officer had been professional. She had not been arrested. The order required she return the children to Nashville and surrender her passport, pending the full custody hearing. She had complied without incident, which Patricia told me was legally smart, even if it was personally humiliating. I turned around at a rest stop and drove back. I met Jonah and Nora at Patricia's office, where they'd been brought by a family services officer while Priya's situation was processed. Nora was awake by then, sitting on a leather couch, eating a granola bar someone had found for her, looking more annoyed than frightened. Jonah was standing near the window with his arms crossed, watching the parking lot. When I walked in, Nora climbed off the couch and walked into my side without a word. I put my arm around her and held on. Jonah looked at me and said, "I knew something was wrong when she packed the goods suitcases." I almost laughed. 13 years old, and reading luggage as evidence. He was going to be formidable someday. I took them home. I made grilled cheese and tomato soup, Nora's specific request, and we watched half of an animated film before she fell asleep on the couch and Jonah retreated to his room. I sat in the kitchen afterward with a cup of coffee and the quiet understanding that what Priya had just done had changed her legal position irrevocably. Patricia confirmed it not long after. Judge Aldridge's response to the attempted relocation was swift and unambiguous. Priya's parenting time was reduced to supervised visits pending the full proceedings. Her attorney, Stuart Colby, filed an objection that Judge Aldridge denied in 4 sentences. And in the background, moving quietly through the machinery of federal law, the DA's office had received Doug's referral on the Shell Company fraud. An investigator had made contact with Doug. That process would take months, but it had started, and it was going to reach its conclusion whether Priya was in Nashville or Memphis or anywhere else she thought she could run to. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table while both kids were doing homework and thought about how close I'd come to losing them. Not in the dramatic way, not in the courtroom, but in the quiet, ordinary way that happens when someone simply drives away and doesn't come back.
Jonah had stopped that.
A 13-year-old boy with a phone and the presence of mind to use it. I made a mental note to take him somewhere he'd actually enjoy. His choice, no agenda. He picked rock climbing.
Of course he did.
Months later, Nashville was cold and gray in the way it gets in the depths of winter, when the city can't decide whether it wants to be Southern or Midwestern about the season. The fraud case against Priya and the ZW Advisory Group had moved into formal investigation. The DA's office had interviewed Doug twice and requested additional documentation from our accountant. Priya's attorney had advised her to stop talking publicly about anything related to the case, which meant the stream of increasingly erratic voicemails I'd been receiving had finally gone quiet. Zane Whitfield had settled the defamation suit out of court. Carl Briggs negotiated a figure that I put directly into a college fund for Jonah and Nora without announcing it to anyone. Gerald Whitfield had reportedly cut off financial support to Zane's consulting business entirely following the showcase collapse. As far as I could tell, Zane was attempting to rebuild something smaller and quieter in another city. I wished him exactly as much luck as he deserved. The divorce was finalized not long after. The asset division took longer than it should have, primarily because Priya's attorneys tried 3 separate maneuvers to reclassify portions of my business revenue as marital property. Each one failed. Patricia secured the custody arrangement we'd won at the preliminary hearing as the permanent order. Primary physical custody to me. Scheduled parenting time for Priya, supervised until the fraud proceedings concluded. The company had a strong stretch. 2 new podcast clients, a live event deal with a regional music festival I'd been courting for a long time, and a speaking engagement referral that turned into a consulting contract. The brand partners Zane had poisoned had all returned, 3 of them with apologies I accepted without ceremony. The work was good. The team was solid. Life in the professional sense had not only recovered but moved forward. The kids were doing well. Jonah had joined a robotics club at school and came home on meeting days with paint on his hands and opinions about circuit design. Nora had decided she wanted to be a marine biologist or a country singer, and she wasn't ruling anything out. She'd also started keeping a journal, filling it with drawings and observations about the world in the specific earnest way of 9-year-olds who are paying close attention. On a Saturday, once winter had settled in fully, I took them both to the Tennessee Aquarium in Chattanooga. Nora's idea. She'd been asking for a while, and I'd finally cleared the calendar. We drove down early, Nora narrating the highway landscape the entire way while Jonah read and occasionally looked up to correct a factual error in whatever she was saying. The aquarium was everything she'd hoped for. She stood in front of the jellyfish tank for a solid stretch without speaking, which may have been the longest she'd gone without speaking since birth. Jonah got genuinely absorbed in a river otter exhibit and tried to explain otter territorial behavior to Nora with a focused intensity he brought to everything he cared about. I stood back and watched them. On the way home, Nora fell asleep in the back seat before we left the Chattanooga city limits. Jonah stayed awake, watching the highway scroll past in the dark. Some time into the drive, he said, without turning from the window, "Dad, I think things are better now." I looked at him in the rear-view mirror. "Yeah," I said. "I think so, too." He nodded and went back to the window. I drove the rest of the way home, listening to the road and my daughter breathing in the back seat. And I thought about what it takes to rebuild something after it's been taken apart. Not the legal mechanics of it, not the strategy, just the daily, unglamorous work of showing up, making dinner, helping with homework, watching animated films you've already seen, being present for the ordinary moments that aren't memorable except that they're everything. I'd spent over a decade building a marriage that turned out to be built on someone else's terms. I wasn't doing that again. Whatever came next, and there would be a next someday when the time was right, it would be built on ground I chose and cleared myself. The Nashville skyline appeared on the horizon. I took the exit I knew by heart and drove my children home.